It feels like you're unraveling, like something has cracked beneath the surface of your life. And now everything familiar is slipping through your fingers. Relationships, routines, even your sense of self. You feel heavy, tired, hollow. You look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Well, what if this isn't the end of you? What if this is the moment you finally wake up? Most people never get here. Not really. They live their entire lives skating on the surface. They distract themselves when things get hard. They scroll, they work, they self-medicate. The second the ground shakes, they run for anything that feels safe. But not you. You're still here, watching this, listening, leaning in. Something it tells me you're different. It tells me you're ready. Because falling apart isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's demolition, purposeful, necessary, sacred. Sometimes life tears down the false version of you to make space for something real, something whole, something true. You feel like you're breaking because the lie can't hold up. Anymore, the lie that you're fine, the lie that success equals peace, the lie that strength means silence. But the truth is rising in you, and it's louder than it's ever been. Maybe that's why everything hurts. Maybe that's why nothing fits anymore. Not because you failed, but because you've outgrown who you were. And while most people will never understand this, will never sit in the silence long enough to hear what it's trying to say, you will. You already are, this moment. This collapse isn't breaking you, it's remaking you. So breathe. You're not lost. You're not broken. You're not falling apart. You're finally waking up. And that changes everything. Confusion feels like failure. You're not sure who you are anymore. The people around you don't understand. Your goals feel blurry. Your purpose, once so clear, now feels like a distant echo. It's disorienting, like walking through fog with no map, no certainty, no solid ground. But what if that fog isn't a mistake? What if it's part of the process? Before the sun rises, there's always fog. That strange, quiet moment where everything is still, but nothing is clear. The world is reshaping itself, and you're caught between the dark and the light. The fog isn't the end, it's the sign. You're close. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. The fog you're in, it's not your enemy. It's not a verdict on your life. It's a misunderstanding, your mind interpreting uncertainty as danger, when it's really just unfamiliar truth approaching. You were taught to fear not knowing. But the Stoics knew, not knowing is the doorway to knowing deeper. Most people run from confusion. They force answers. They make impulsive decisions, just to feel in control. But the Stoic waits, listens, observes. They let the fog pass, without flinching, because under the fog lies something beautiful, a clearer sense of self, a stripped-down truth, a voice that isn't shaped by the world, but by something ancient and unshakable within. So if you feel lost and uncertain right now, good. That means you're no longer blindly following the noise. It means your old identity is dissolving, and space is being made for something real. This is not the end of clarity. It's the beginning. Stand still. Watch the light shift. Stay close to yourself. Let the fog rise. You are not lost. You are not failing. You're in the sacred space. Between endings and emergence, the fog is not a flaw. It's a signal. You're getting closer. The moment pain shows up, most people shut down. They reach for their phones. They binge watch. They drink. They scroll. They do anything to avoid feeling, because feeling means facing, and facing means changing. And change. That's terrifying. Discomfort is the signal most people mute. They convince themselves they're fine. They say, "It's just a bad week," or "I just need a distraction." But in reality, they're not escaping the storm. They're just delaying the lesson. The Stoic does the opposite. While the masses numb out, the Stoic leans in. They don't flee the storm. They step out into it, deliberately, quietly, without fanfare. Not to suffer, but to study, to understand, to strengthen that pain. To the Stoic is not a punishment. It's a professor. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, faced endless trials, political betrayal, war, plague, the death of his children. Yet, instead of collapsing under the weight of it all, he wrote, he observed, he reflected. He didn't seek escape, he sought meaning. He wrote not to entertain others, but to make sense of suffering. His meditations weren't performative, they were survival. Philosophy was his anchor in the chaos, and yours can be too. Most people ask, how do I get away from this pain? The Stoic asks, what is this pain trying to teach me? Most people chase pleasure to avoid discomfort. The Stoic uses discomfort as a doorway to peace. It's easy to look around and think, you're falling behind because you're feeling more deeply than others are showing. But in reality, feeling isn't failure. It's evidence that your inner life matters. If you find yourself in discomfort, don't rush to escape it. Ask it questions, trace its patterns, sit with it long enough for truth to emerge from the tension. That's the path most won't walk, but it's the path that leads to awakening. Don't shut yourself down. This suffering isn't senseless, it's a signal. Lean in. You used to be sure about where life was headed, about what success looked like, about who you were supposed to be, but now that certainty is gone. You're asking questions you never dared ask before. You're pulling at the thread of beliefs that once felt untouchable, and it's terrifying. Because when the foundation starts to shake, it feels like everything might collapse. But here's the truth. Questioning doesn't mean you're breaking down. It means you're breaking open. Most people cling to answers, even wrong ones, just to avoid the discomfort of not knowing. They never challenge the stories they inherited. They wear their identities like armor, never considering the cost of staying the same. But wisdom begins where certainty ends. When the answers you were given no longer satisfy you, it's not regression, it's expansion. It means you've grown. Too big for the old narrative. This unrest you're feeling? It's not a crisis. It's a calling. You're not drifting. You're deepening. The Stoics didn't chase belief. They chased truth. And truth wasn't something they were handed. It was something they uncovered through experience, contemplation, and courage. They knew the first step to clarity wasn't more certainty, it was honesty. Marcus Aurelius constantly challenged his own thinking. His meditations weren't affirmations of what he already believed. They were wrestling's questions, reflections in the middle of the storm. So if you're in a season of doubt, trust it. Not all roots grow in the sunlight. Sometimes growth looks like confusion. Exercise. Write down 3 things you're beginning to question about yourself, about the world, about what you've always chased, and then sit with them. Don't solve, defend, or explain. Just notice. Reflect. This is how it starts. Not with answers, but with the courage to ask better questions. Doubt doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finally thinking for yourself. You cry more easily now. Music hits differently. Silence feels louder. The moments you once brushed past now stop you in your tracks. You notice, you ache, you feel doubt, and maybe you've started to wonder, am I getting weaker? But this isn't weakness, it's awareness. Most people go numb as they age. They build walls, calluses, coping mechanisms. Life gets heavy, so they shut down. They blunt their emotions to survive routine. But survival is not the same as living. You're doing something rare. You're waking up to what matters. You feel more because you see more. Anger because you're noticing boundaries you used to ignore. Sadness because you're allowing space for what you've lost. Joy because you finally understand how fleeting it all really is. This is not emotional fragility. This is emotional depth. Epictetus taught that emotion itself isn't the enemy. Instead, he believed that it becomes dangerous only when left unexamined. When guided by reflection and practice, emotion can actually be transformed into virtue. He wrote, "Every habit and faculty is preserved and increased by corresponding actions." In other words, your ability to feel deeply strengthens through your willingness to experience it, not repress it. The Stoic doesn't choke emotion into silence, they sharpen it into awareness. So if you've begun to feel more tensely than you ever have, good. It means you're alive in a world that conditions people to sleepwalk. It means your heart is no longer hidden under 1,000 layers of distraction and expectation. Don't let the world shame you into silence. Don't apologize for your tears, your fire, your sudden stillness. Emotion is not your weakness. It's proof the numbness is breaking. You're not unraveling. You're finally becoming real. Lately, you feel the urge to pull away from conversations, habits, environments that once felt like home. You catch yourself daydreaming about new beginnings, even if you can't quite explain why. It's subtle at first, like a whisper you can't ignore. This isn't impulsiveness. This isn't irresponsibility. This is evolution. There comes a time in everyone's life, often quietly, often unexpectedly, when we realize the life we're living was built by a version of ourselves we no longer are, and that moment doesn't always feel like empowerment. At first, it feels like disorientation. You might question your relationships, your career, your routines. You might find yourself pulling away without understanding why. On the outside, nothing's changed. But on the inside, everything is shifting. You're shedding, like a snake releasing old constrictive skin. Not because it was bad, but because it's simply too small now. Growth requires letting go, and letting go, even when necessary, is never easy, especially in midlife. Is when the world expects you to settle, to stabilize, to make peace with what is. But your soul is restless, not because you're broken, but because you're becoming, and yes, the fear will visit. Fear of starting over, fear of disappointing others, fear of not knowing what comes next. Feel all of it. Then ask yourself this: what part of my life feels off, and what version of me built? It was built by someone chasing approval, someone surviving, someone who didn't yet know their worth. If the answer is yes, then outgrowing it is not betrayal, it's healing. The Stoics teach us that change is natural, and clinging is suffering. What no longer aligns with reason, value, or purpose must be questioned, even if we've invested years building it. So don't silence the impulse to grow. Don't dull it with guilt. That pull to transform is your deeper self knocking, not reckless. You're not confused. You're outgrowing who you were, and that instinct you feel. It's not chaos, it's a calling. What happens when the titles disappear? When you're no longer the parent with constant responsibility, the partner holding everything together, the provider, the achiever, the fixer, What happens when the roles you've lived inside begin to crumble, and you're left staring at yourself with no armor, no label, no script? Most call that a crisis, but the Stoic understands it differently. It's an opportunity, because when identity collapses, the soul has its first chance to speak. You see, we spend so much of life playing roles we didn't even choose. We perform at work, in relationships, even in our own minds, trying to be enough, trying to stay relevant, trying to survive. And over time, we forget there's something deeper underneath the mask. But masks eventually crack. And when they do, it feels like ego. Death, it feels terrifying. Like losing everything, but what you're actually losing isn't you, it's who you thought you had to be. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, was one of Rome's most powerful men, until he was accused, exiled, and left with nothing but his thoughts. No stage, no power, no audience. And in that space, stripped of everything, he didn't fall into despair. He wrote, he reflected, he refined, because to the Stoic, external roles are temporary. Only virtue remains, Seneca wrote. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And few things waste more life than clinging to an identity that no longer serves you. So if the roles are collapsing, let them. If the definitions don't fit anymore, release them. You're not unraveling. You're returning to something quieter, something real, something untouched by applause or expectation. Let go of who the world told you to be, and make space to meet who you really are. Because beyond the collapse, there's clarity. Beyond the ego, there's essence. And beyond identity, there's rebirth. Awakening is beautiful. But it can also feel overwhelming. Once you start to shed old beliefs and explore who you really are beneath the noise, the question becomes, how do I stay grounded in this new reality? Because inspiration fades, emotion fluctuates. Awareness isn't a destination, it's a practice. That's where rituals come in. Not routines for performance, not productivity hacks, but rituals of remembrance, daily practices that bring you back to your center when the world pulls you away. Here are 3 Stoic-inspired tools to anchor you through the fog, the fire, and the transformation. 1. Morning reflection prompt, before your phone, before anyone else's opinions. Sit with yourself. Ask, what kind of person do I want to be today? Write it down. Don't list tasks, name qualities: present, courageous, honest, grounded. This sets your compass for the day. just as the Stoics did with their morning meditations. 2. Evening debrief at the end of your day. Carve out 5 quiet minutes. Ask, what did I react to today and why? This isn't about judgment, it's about observation. What triggered you? What drained your energy? What lifted it? To the Stoic, each day is a teacher, and self-awareness is sharpened one reflection. At a time point 3, the 15-minute silence practice: no music, no screen, no input. Just sit, walk, breathe. Let the world speak to you in its quieter language. Let insight drift in, unforced. This simple practice rewires your nervous system and reminds you that peace doesn't come from answers, it comes from presence. The goal isn't perfection, it's remembrance. These practices aren't about changing who you are, they're about returning to what's already inside you. ClarityCourage.com. The noise will tempt you. Scrolling, comparing, reaching outside for something to fill a gap within. Let these moments call you back, because the world wants you distracted, but your soul wants you awake. Start small, stay consistent. This is the work. Not flashy, not loud, but genuine. And in time, these small acts become sacred, not discipline, but devotion. Sometimes you're so focused on what's missing, what's shifting, or what hurts, you forget to notice what hasn't broken. You're still here, still breathing, still listening, still seeking. That alone sets you apart from the majority who gave up before they even began. Most never make it this far, not because they're weak, but because awakening is a kind of burning, and it takes extraordinary courage to sit inside that fire and not run. You've already survived what would have broken most: the sleepless nights, the identity loss, the quiet moments where you questioned your worth, your future, your place in the world, the days where just getting up was an act of resistance. And yet, here you are. Maybe you still feel scattered. Maybe it still feels like something's slipping, like your edges are undefined. But that's not regression. That's restructuring. You were never falling apart. You were being replanted. And just because there was no applause or announcement doesn't make your survival any less sacred. Think of a tree in winter. From the outside, it looks still, maybe even dead. But underground, in complete silence. The roots grow deeper to prepare for what's next. We just assume stillness must mean collapse, when really, it means root growth. Look at who you were when this all started. Look at how you react differently now, how much more you notice, how much less you tolerate disconnection from your truth. That's not you breaking, that is evidence of becoming. So no, you don't need to be fully healed, fully certain, or fully put together right now. You just need to honor that you're still standing, still searching, still reaching for something deeper. Don't underestimate that, ever. Proven something to yourself that no external validation could measure. You didn't give up, you didn't shut down, you're still in the arena. And that makes you strong, that makes you rare, that makes you ready. You've walked through the fire. Not everyone saw it. Not everyone understood, but you did. You lived it. You felt the unraveling, the silence, the shift. You stood in the fog, bone-tired and aching, wondering if this was your end, but something powerful happened. You didn't run, you didn't numb, you didn't quit, you listened, you stayed, you awakened. And you need to hear this clearly. This is not your collapse. This is your rising, this pain, this disruption, this strange in-between you're standing in. It's not the death of who you are, it's the death of who you aren't. Because now you're beginning to see. You were never broken. You were just buried. Buried by roles, by expectations, by false definitions of success. And now you're digging yourself out, one truth at a time. This is the sacred work, not the loud kind, not the kind with applause, but the quiet kind that changes your life from the inside out. So, as you move forward, carry this mantra in your heart. I'm not falling apart. I'm awakening. Say it in the comments below. Affirm it. Declare it. Tattoo it into your healing process. Let others see they're not alone. Someone may read your words at 2 a.m. and realize they're not lost either. They're simply waking up to reflect and share your story. Someone needs your honesty more than you know. Comment, I'm not falling apart. I'm awakening. Subscribe if this message found you exactly where you needed it. This isn't the end, it's the beginning of a deeper path. In a world where most people stay asleep, you chose to open your eyes, and for that, I honor you. You don't need to heal overnight. You just need to remember, you're not collapsing, you're becoming **.